welcome back to another special edition of Wild Traxx. I have with me my buddy, as always, Mr. Gary Allison.
Hey!
And joining us via Skype is the one and only Mr. Rick Allen.
Rick Allen!
Yeah, make some noise.
That's my line. It can be our line. It's okay. And we have another special edition of Wild Traxx in which we're going to go to NAB 2017 for a series of shows that Mr. Rick and I recorded for a podcast show called Making Noise with Rick and Rick.
And absolutely. One of the ones that I loved was, let's play it now. A great interview with a great boom operator, great sound designer, great sound effects person in general, Colin Hart.
Welcome to the podcast that explores everything about the world of sound effects and sound design.
This is Making Noise with Rick and Rick.
Sound effect and sound design experts Rick Allen and Rick Veers.
Welcome to another crazy edition of Making Noise with Rick and Rick. I'm Rick Allen.
And I'm the other Rick.
Mr. Rick Veers.
Make some noise.
I'm not Rick.
Oh my goodness. Who's that third voice with us, Mr. Rick Allen?
Hey, I'm telling you, you gotta introduce Colin and all of the crazy background stuff that he's done.
All right, well, today with us is my old friend, Colin Hart. He is the guy I go to when I don't know what I'm doing. So if I have a microphone question...
You get a lot of calls, don't you,
Yes,
Colin?
he does. I'm like, what am I doing here?
I have a special line for Rick.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a bat phone. It's like the little red phone. But Colin, gee whiz, I'm going to try to explain who you are as best as I can without hacking it up too bad. But you used to teach at Full Sail University.
Yep.
And now you're out in LA doing a combination of sound effects, sound design, and location sound. You own Hart FX. And
Co-own Big Tree Media, which is a new venture with a buddy of mine, Joe DeMarco.
Joe, who has absolutely killer tattoos, by the way.
He does. He has a lot of tattoos.
I actually am proud to be able to say I remember Joe when he didn't have tattoos.
No, you don't.
I don't?
No.
I thought I met him before he had all those tattoos.
You met Joe before you could see them because they were all under his shirt line.
That's right, because he wasn't... Yeah, that's right.
Because his parents didn't like tattoos.
Forgot about that. So there you go. So now that we've had this, so that's our show, folks.
Yep, we're done. Joe DeMarco.
I learned a lot today. See you again.
So let's talk about Big Tree Meteor. So
right.
What did you guys just released something?
We did. We released a library called Submerged, which is like 3 or 4 years of the making of underwater stuff. I got really interested. I'm interested in weird things like, hey, record underwater. Okay, I want to explore that to the furthest depth I can. And we got Rob Nichols from Aquarian involved, and he taught us all about how their hydrophones work, and they're really cost effective. Like a really good hydrophone's like $130, $150 from them. And he taught me about the acoustics of it and how their microphones were meant to be used and everything. And we experimented for years, everything from chasing animals underwater to chasing boats. We hired a scuba diver to do all sorts of stuff, and we did a whole session with fireworks in a pool. We did underwater screams, all sorts of stuff. And then underwater design stuff, canned air underwater, any underwater big noises you can make. So we just released that. We've gotten amazing feedback from it, and we're prepping to do a second version with some more subtle stuff, according to what people said they were missing.
And that's awesome. Yeah. So how many sounds are in there total?
I don't remember. I think somewhere in the 250 range. It might be more. I don't remember. That's not my department.
Oh, that's not your department?
Colin, I'd like to actually ask you how you got started in the business, because I know you've been teaching, had taught at Full Sail, and then your experience in Hollywood. But how did it all begin?
When I was about 5, I saw a soundboard and I needed to touch it, and I was just obsessed. Anything electronic. If I saw this Tascam RCF 82 mixer, I would take it apart. I took everything apart. So my parents gave me an old 286. I took it apart. It didn't work. I took it apart. I put it back together, and it worked. And I couldn't stop taking things apart after that. So that kind of dovetailed into, we went to church every Sunday, and there was always a soundboard, and that was the most tech thing I could do because sermons bored me. So I eventually got my parents to supervise me like taping the sermons when I was like 8 or something, and that moved into eventually running sound for churches. Then in high school I ran sound for 4 different churches, so every Sunday I'd like go to this place, go to that place, go to this place, and run their services. And I got really obsessed with film scores. I wanted to compose. I played piano since I was in 2nd grade, and I learned that I absolutely suck at composing. So I did a summer at Berkeley in Boston, and I got attached to the music engineering side of it, and then so I went towards that until I realized I didn't like that industry either. The people were weird and blah blah blah. Ended me up in film sound design. So basically my career is a series of dead ends that I just detoured at the end of. So I started doing sound design, and then I realized as a early sound designer, you can't get anything to sound design, because like if you're an early director or an early writer, you just go out, you write, you go out and you direct. You can't just go out and sound design. You need something to design too. So I started recording my own libraries and stuff just because it was a thing to do. And then I needed an outlet, so I started a blog, and then people started following my blog, and then they said, sell your sound, so I started selling my sounds, and now I'm somehow here.
Well, and it's a good story that people can learn from. You classify it as a lot of dead ends, but it's actually walking down a hallway and opening a lot of doors.
Yeah, it's a lot of doors. You open, you're like, I don't like what's in that one. Yeah. I'm just going to keep going.
And it's just proof that you can't find your dream, you can't find your passion until you do things and find out what you love.
Yeah, you got to get out there. You got to explore and just see what catches your heartstrings, what pulls you towards it. And then you can explore it and find out, well, that was initially really cool, but I don't care about that now.
What was your first recorder? What did you get out there and use out in the field?
It was a Fosex FR2 LE that I got when I worked I was a manager at Guitar Center, and I got it for cost. So it was like $200 or something. I got that and a cheap Audio-Technica shotgun and just went out. I remember my first time on set, I was walking through Central Park because I lived in New York at the time, and I had my shotgun and my headphones on, and I had my recorder in a bag, and I happened upon a huge Union movie set. It was for When in Rome, and they had PAs guarding all the entrances, and I walked up to one, nodded my head with my headphones and my shotgun, and kept on walking. And I just sat on the set for the whole day. I found the sound recordist, I went and I talked to him and said, how do you get into this industry? And
you literally snuck your way into the film industry. That's hilarious. That's awesome. That's how you do it.
That was my first film set.
You got to recognize an opportunity and take it.
Absolutely,
Good
man.
job.
Yeah, if there's no open door, you just go right through the wall, I guess.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this.
I'm the type of guy that if you tell me no, I'm going to find a way to do it anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're in the right club. And speaking of the right club, we were talking earlier before the show, when you first started, you were, intimidated about the industry and meeting these people and all that. And obviously now you're in the industry, you're deep in the industry now. The professionals are now not only your buddies, but they're also coming to you and asking you questions and participating and hiring you and working with you, etc. What advice would you give to someone who's starting out where they're like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming, I'm not even sure if I'm doing it right, how do I approach people and talk? How would you, or what would you say to younger you getting started, getting into the industry today?
Most of the people, there's always exceptions, but the majority of the people are just normal people. They're passionate about the same things you are, and they want to help you. Like when people come to me for help, I want to help them. I like talking about gear. I like, pointing them in the right direction. I love connecting people. And for the most part, most people will do that. There's some people, the hardest thing for me is I take a lot of things personally. So if somebody didn't get back to me, I would take it personally. And I found out it's not because, I didn't find this out until I moved to LA. It's not because they don't want to get back to you. It's because they literally don't have any time. LA, for some reason, you move there and you have no time. I don't even work half the time and I have no time. I don't even know where it goes. It's just gone. Most of it's lost on the 101, but...
Yes, I was just going to say, yeah.
Get Audible. When you go to LA, get an Audible subscription.
What is it?
Audiobooks.
Audiobooks.
It's an Amazon plug. I have no affiliation with Amazon.
Okay,
I just like audio. Audible.
So, how many microphones do you have?
27.
Look at that.
I think you made that number up.
Are you sure it's exactly 27?
No, because there's one in the mail, and I don't know if it's at my house yet.
So it could be 28.
It could be 28.
So let's call it 27.5
right.
microphones. Do you have, all right, here you go. What's your favorite out of the 27? So for example, there's a house fire. I'm calling you up. I'm going, listen, dude, I got bad news for you. You've lost all your gear. However, we did save one microphone. Which one do you hope it is?
The only one that's going to be hard to replace is I have a vintage KM81 or 84i, which is a little tiny pencil mic about 5-6 inches long. It's a Neumann from the 70s.
It's a KM
84i. And it's my go-to dialogue mic. It's what's always at the end of my boom pole. It's light, it's great, perfect indoors. The only time I don't do it is if it's too noisy around and we need a shotgun or something. But that's my favorite mic. The other ones, I mean, they're all just tools. They're just what works now. I can't really have a go-to mic because it doesn't always work that way. Like, I love my DPA 4061, but it doesn't work on everybody. You put it on a guy with a boomy voice like myself, it doesn't sound good.
Right.
I was wondering, the amount of time, you obviously have done a lot of different things and are doing a lot of different things. What's your percentage of the amount of time you're working as a boom pole operator recording ADI, or when you're out recording sound effects, or you're in mastering sound effects, or you're sitting down and doing metadata and that sort of thing? Is there a typical day, or is there a percentage of a typical month?
I'm a very much follow your heart kind of guy. It's hard for me to channel my muse. I kind of have to go where my brain's going. I follow it. I can't make it follow me. For the most part. I mean, when you get on set, you have to mix and on their schedule, and that's great. But at home, if I'm not mixing, I probably mix, like last year I mixed probably 5 months out of the year. And the rest of the time was doing sound effects or traveling. I got married last year, so it was a weird year.
But in weird, you mean good year. Good.
Oh, it was good, but schedule-wise, it was
just in case
everything.
Your wife is listening.
Oh, she knows it's weird. Everything was all over the place. I went to Korea, I went to Tennessee, I went to Idlewild, I went to upstate for a wedding. It was crazy. But for the most part, probably about a third to half of my year is production audio. Anytime I'm not on set, I'm either recording sound effects or editing sound effects. So my business partner and I have a workflow where one of us records, we put it into a folder on Dropbox. He rough cuts everything, so he cuts out all the extraneous whatever and does rough labels. I'll go in and master everything. And I have a whole mastering process that I do. And then I pop it back up and he does metadata and sends it off. So I don't do metadata because it kills me as a human being.
As your mind explodes.
I would say metadata is, I wouldn't say it's the most important. Obviously, the sound is certainly the most important thing. But I would say that metadata certainly has an incredible importance in sound effects.
One of the biggest problems with metadata, and I've seen people post it on Facebook, big sound designers like a David Farmer type, they'll say, I bought this new library and the metadata isn't useful, I'm not even going to use this library. Like, if it's not useful, they won't fix it, they just throw it in the trash. Because they can't find it. If you can't find it, it could be the best sound in the world. If you can't find it, it doesn't matter.
I actually, and this is true, I have sound effects libraries. Several, I'm not going to name which ones they are, but I have sound effect libraries from other people that I've never used a single sound just because of the fact that the metadata was just not useful, or there wasn't any. It was just like a track sheet on a PDF. I'm like, look, I don't have time to go through this.
One of the things we fight as sound people too is if you're trying to find a picture, you can Google and the images come up. You can look at 500 pictures in a minute and glance over them and see, you can really narrow down what you want to go and look at closer. With sound, you can't do that. You have to listen to each and every sound.
Exactly.
Unless the metadata can let you filter that. So metadata is very important, but one of the things I find is if you're a right brain creative person and love doing sound, the left brain metadata, logic side, sometimes we don't intermix well sometimes.
But the important thing, like the way we do our metadata is we take like a week and we do a powwow and say, all right, I'm right brain, my business partner is left brain mostly, and I'll say, all right, if a sound designer, am looking for the sound, what am I going to search for? And we go back and forth. It takes like a week just to figure out what to call stuff because it's that important.
The keywords are so important.
Yeah.
It's got to be the right one.
Yeah, and not putting too much, because some people are like, oh, I'll just put all the keywords in. And then it's like, well, if this sound comes up for every search, you're just going to delete it because it's annoying.
Yeah, you're not going to believe them. It's like crying wolf too many times. If it's not a proprietary thing. Talk to us about your mastering technique on if you have a raw sound effect, what do you do to it to get it to the final form for release?
Well, I use my software of choice is Adobe Audition. It provides, and I don't like their multi-track layout that much. I use their waveform editor, which is the default view. If you bring a file in, double-click on it, it brings it up as a waveform. And it also has a spectral analysis, which is incredibly helpful because I can see what I'm looking at. Because when I'm in a mastering, I need to see what's happening. Like, there could be a 40 hertz hum that I can't hear because my room's not big enough to play it, but I need to know that there's 40 hertz that's taken up, 5 dB in my headroom, and it has nothing to do with the sound. So get that out, and there's a click here and a pop, or this weird extraneous sound, or this noise. And then I use, actually the majority of my plugins are Isotope. I'm obsessed with Alloy, which is unfortunately being discontinued, but it's going into a Neutron?
Yes.
Neutrino. A lot of times I use a transient designer as noise reduction. If there's like, especially if you've got like static bursts on wireless or whatever, you can use like transient designer to help minimize them. I'll use RX all the time. RX6 is amazing. I use that for everything.
What's your favorite new feature in RX6?
De-Russell. It doesn't work the best yet, but their track record is, okay, it works pretty well. Next version will work well, and then 2 versions from now it'll be kick-ass, if I can say that. I love Isotope, but then I also have Waves Platinum. I'll use X Noise and Z Noise. It's weird. Sometimes RX just cannot hear a noise, and it gets rid of everything except the noise you want. And then you go to Z Noise, or you go to X Noise, or you go to a multi-band expander like WNS or Cedar. So it's pretty much the sound dictates what I do. But I do have like probably 5 main things that I go to, and I use EQ liberally.
Will you use a preset with RX, or do you tweak the settings a lot to get to where you want to be?
I used to use presets. If it's dialogue, you can get away with presets a lot because their presets are fantastic. But I just recently, through these last couple of libraries, really dug into RX. And if you know what you're doing, it can do ridiculous things. And especially with the denoiser module, with the whitening and the enhancement and all those different things, you can totally get it. You're like, well, no, it's kind of like making it warbly here, and you switch setting, all of a sudden it's gone. It's really flexible, and it doesn't take that much time to learn.
What's next for you?
We've got 6 libraries that we're working on right now.
Holy Christmas.
A couple
Are you working
of them,
all of them at the same time? Like, I work on this one for a little bit, then I'm going to work on this one for a little bit?
Well, what we're doing first is, for years and years and years, I just recorded the heck out of anything and everything. Like, I lived in a house with 2 roommates in Florida, and I had them trained. If you hear thunder, here's the recorder, it goes on the porch, and you hit, here's how you turn it on, here's how you record. Now I have a ton of thunder, really good thunder. And I just, recently, when we started this new company, I consolidated all of my recordings into one place so we could sort through them all, and we now have like 680 gigs of raw unedited sound. So we're trying to get through that. We're about 1/3 of the way through. We're hoping to be through it by midsummer, and then we've got a few like tiny libraries that we're going after, like little $40, $50 libraries and little useful things. We've got a follow-up to Submerge that we're going to do. I don't know if we're going to do another Gator library. I released the Gator library under Hard Effects, which was 54 files. I think it was somewhere around 200 sounds. I've got a lot more source that we never cut, but...
Now those were, we were talking about that. You recorded those with, some of that was with David Farmer, correct?
Yeah, well, I recorded there for 3 years, and then towards the end of that, David was looking for some sound effects for a film he was working on, and he was out for Full Sail Hall of Fame, and I said, hey, I'll take you out, I'll show you the ropes, because I had figured out how to get them to bellow on command.
I was supposed to be on that recording session.
You were.
We were supposed to do it 2 different days in a row.
You were not feeling well.
No, neither of us was. The first time because we
David
stayed up
answered
till,
his phone in the morning.
That's what it was. Because you guys wanted to get up at like 5 in the morning, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just listen to the playback later. I think is what the call was.
Well, they start bellowing sometimes as early as 7:30. We're on their clock. They're not on our clock. So
I'm still mentally processing the fact that you know how to make gators make noise on command.
I can show you a picture if you want, but we had about 3 years into this, the BBC contacted me and said, "Hey, we hear you're a Gator sound expert." I'm like, I've never heard that before, but sure. And they brought me along. They were recording for this show called Superhuman or something to that extent, and they were doing an episode on sound, and one of the sounds they wanted to get was the gator bellow, which has a very low rumble to it before the actual audible bellow. And it's really cool because the gator will put its neck up and then the back will start vibrating. You can't hear anything, but we're standing on this boardwalk and the whole thing just starts shaking, and all the water around him, even a couple feet away, just starts bouncing.
Did the water make noise though? Was it enough movement to interfere?
Oh yeah,
with sound?
oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, and we recorded it, and some of these gators were between 12 and 18 hertz. Was that original frequency? So there's this guy in Tallahassee named Bruce Thigpen, I think his name is. He runs a company that makes what are called Rotary Woofers, which looks like a big fan, but it's capable of producing 120, 130 decibels at 20 hertz with 200 watts of power. It's insane. So anyway, he tuned these 2 giant, those sono tubes that they use for cement forms. These 2 big 6-foot sono tubes that were 15 feet long, and he tuned each one to the recordings that I gave him, and then he put the woofers in so they were tuned to that. We pulled it up next to the pond where all the gators were. Every time we hit play, all of them simultaneously just went nuts. So all day long, we just hit play and they would go. So the camera guys were eating it up and everything, and it was fantastic. And that actually spawned from an idea that David gave me of, I wonder, because it's a territorial thing, I wonder if you can make them do it. So we started playing with speakers. I had a big JBL speaker that I brought out on a baby stroller, Mike Orlowski's baby stroller.
Mike Orlowski.
We used that to test it, and the first time when I went with David, the first time we tested it, we hit play, and about 20 to 30 gators came like they were children in a semicircle in front of us, just staring, all of them just staring at us, like we were telling them a story. Wow. It was the weirdest thing, and then they all started bellowing. So
that story just points out, though, the fact that when someone's starting out in this business, you need to experiment. You need to just try different things. Because, I mean, I would have never thought to play back that sound to generate some activity. But the fact that you, somewhere in your mind, you went, let's try something different. And that's something that I think people need to remember. Always think outside the box. Try, and because it might not have worked, but it did. But
yeah, and that's another cool thing, because I got that idea from David, and it brought up a point, like some people that you may see eye to eye with, maybe you don't, they'll come up with some weird ideas, and sometimes you just got to roll with it. Like I come up with weird ideas that other people roll with, so I'm going to roll with someone else's, and maybe it'll work. Maybe it'll turn out to be awesome. In this case, the owner of the park wanted to buy one of these things.
Oh,
he's
really?
like, wait, you can make them do that on a command? That'd be a good attraction.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. What do you use for metadata?
SoundMiner.
Okay, you use SoundMiner for everything then, right?
The only reason we do that is because that's what everybody that buys our stuff uses.
Right.
And it's the only software we found that's pretty much compatible against all other software. I haven't checked out the new Basshead yet. I've heard fantastic things.
I've heard good things about it too, yeah.
But we used to use Audition, we used to use a few other things, and it just didn't translate across all platforms. SoundMiner does, and it's the standard.
I use SoundMiner for everything, and I absolutely love SoundMiner. Yeah. Fantastic program.
Colin, thank you so much for stopping by. This was you made some good noise with us today.
Yes, thank you, man.
So another show live from the NAB 2017. Thank you, Tascam, for letting us kind of hog into your territory. And Rick, thank you.
And thank you. And Colin, thank you.
And thank you.
We've all been thanked.
Sirs, thank you. Thank you.
Now we'll wait for the next time, Making Noise with Rick and Rick.
Make some noise.
Thanks for listening to Making Noise with Rick and Rick. Keep an ear out. Another episode is never that far away.